Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Talking God and Politics with Mark and Mike. It's been a long time, Mark.
It has. It has. It's been a few months.
Yes, we've both been very busy, and I've had a couple of Predators conferences and geez, all kinds of stuff. Writing another book, and but I'm excited to get back into the show. There's so much going on in the news right now. And for most of you, what we have been doing in the past is we've been doing a review of Alex Jones's book, The Great Awakening: Defeating the Globalists and Launching the Next Great Renaissance. And I believe we were in chapter 4 and we kind of revisited that. We're not going to talk a whole lot about chapter 4, maybe a little bit, but most of the program will be just kind of touching on some current events and some news that's taking place. And that's going to be pretty much the bulk of the show. But let's start, Mark, with chapter 4. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, um, I didn't really. Let's see. I had some notes here.
I mean, I like the overall arching theme of it was that the government wants to keep its citizens poor, and this is what the globalists want. The globalists want the middle class poor and completely dependent upon the government. And he used an illustration of, when you have a teenager in your house, you give them an allowance, but it's not enough for them to be independent. It's just enough for them to be responsible and dependent upon you. But when they get older, you might give them a little credit card for some gas in their car. If they break down, they need some funds. That's what that credit card's for. Then they transition into college, and you hope that by the time they graduate college, they get a better job, and then they become completely independent of you. And as a parent, that's what you want for your children. You want them to be successful, you want them to be independent. But that is not the mindset of the government. The government wants to keep you on a short leash. It wants you to be poor and completely dependent on the state. And I think that's pretty much, where he was going with that. And then he tied it in with globalism, Klaus Schwab, and you'll have nothing, you'll own nothing, and you'll be happy. Because, mommy and daddy government, from cradle to grave is pretty much the goal, to
Yeah.
enslave you and to keep you under their thumb.
Well, and you look at history, with the Native Americans and how the United States government felt bad, and I think it's funny how it always starts. I think the people in power have always understood this concept, but I think people in general are like, well, yeah, we do owe them that. Let's give them some land, and it totally ruined their culture. I mean, totally ruined them
Hmm.
by giving them these lands, and then flash forward to the 60s with you know LBJ, and the welfare system that starts there. People again think, well, okay, it's all about helping the poor, and it ruined the black culture. It ruined them, and it's like anything that it touches, it just totally destroys whatever culture was there. And then of course now you flash forward, and there's incentivized the government incentivizes women to have children outside of marriage, and incentivizes them to be a single mom with 14 kids. You make a lot more money with the more kids you have. And so it's been this just one thing after another, one pile-on after another pile-on of just disastrous policies that people in general think it's a good idea until it happens, and then it just totally ruins everything that was good about the intentions. And we see that today in the welfare system. And I think the people in power do it. They know from the very beginning what they're doing. I think
Yes.
it's just the average American, thinks, oh well, we need to do this. And obviously, it pushes the church out of the way, because that was the intent of the church from the beginning. Um, even when America was founded, that's what the church did. The church took care of all these people, and now most churches don't even know how to do it. If the welfare system went away, the churches wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The church has taken the place, or the state has taken the place of the church. That's unfortunate, and the Democrat Party, to most normies today, they think that the Democrat Party is pro-black and that it's the Republicans that are the racist. And yet the Democrat Party has this history of KKK being the ones that are racist, trying to block all kinds of bills and everything else the Republicans were passing to give blacks even more freedom. And
Right.
yet I think it was the president that you had just mentioned that said, hey, we're going to get blacks voting for us forever. And they figured out a way of enslaving them a different way. And it's kind of this plantation mentality where
Right.
they just keep them poor enough to where
Right.
they're dependent on them. And they've brainwashed them to think, oh, they're really giving us free stuff. They really care. Where would we be without them? And it creates this victimhood mentality that creates no motivation to do anything outside of that. But we're seeing that change, though, aren't we, Mark? With
Oh
Trump,
yeah, big time. This has been the most eye-opening thing for me, is that minorities and people that normally would have voted Democrat are totally walking away from the party because of exactly what you're talking about. It's kind of like the veil has been lifted, and they're like, you know what? This is exactly what they've been doing. They just, it was extending the plantation is the old adage that they use, that slavery never went away. They just extended it.
Yeah, yeah. They just disguised it a little bit better than they did before. All right. Well, that's good. I think that's pretty much the bulk of chapter 4. Did you have any other thoughts on that? I mean, he did a really good job of showing how, the Rothschilds kind of came in 1913 with the Federal Reserve. And ever since then, the Federal Reserve and now the Rothschilds are like the central banks of central banks. So they're trying to take that paradigm and make it global to make you fit in and be a global citizen, not a citizen of the country that you're in. But they've extended this monetary bondage and slavery through the CBDC, this digital currency that will be able to track you, that will be able to tie into your social credit score. So if you said something bad politically, we're going to turn off your money. And they have the capability of doing that. So he shows throughout history how the banking cartel has this philosophy of keeping you enslaved to them, not wanting you to become wealthy and independent. Because, as he says, if you have money, you have freedom. If you have a lot of money, you can write books, you can pay for advertising, you can have a much bigger megaphone. If you have more money, you have more freedom. And so he's tying that in, and he's saying the globalists don't want you having freedom. The globalists don't want you to have a voice. And they know that if you have money and you're independently wealthy, that's a threat to their system. And I thought he did a really good job of developing that.
Yeah, and it's interesting that when you talk about that at an individual level and how a country can control its population, but then you look at it on a global level, and the U.S. dollar, the petrodollar, has been the world currency since after World War II, and with Nixon removing the last vestiges of gold for trading, now it's just the dollar itself. And you really saw this with George Bush when he took the money and he began to weaponize the dollar by putting sanctions on other countries and using the dollar as a way of saying, well, if you're going to do things we don't agree with, then we're just going to control your finances. We're going to block you out of the banks. We're going to block you out of being able to trade on open markets with your resources. And that's, he talks about it. In comes the BRIC countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and Saudi Arabia, and they begin to build this ability to trade on the open market outside of the dollar. Well, now you flash forward to the Biden administration. And the one thing I will say is I don't believe Trump did this during his first 4 years. He was working towards peace. Yes, he did some military actions, but he never weaponized the dollar. And then, of course, Biden got into office and that administration weaponized it big time. And so now what you're seeing is all these countries like, well, forget it. We're gonna get out of this. Unfortunately, at some point in the near future, the dollar will no longer be the one world currency, and all of the things that we as Americans have taken for granted, meaning low gas prices and things like that, will all go away. Now, whether it'll be this brick nation or whatever, I don't know. But it's coming, and it's coming because of the fact our presidents have weaponized the dollar, and countries, just like individuals, are seeing it now, and the veil has been removed, and they don't want anything to do with it.
Well, yeah, and it doesn't help that the Bushes were skull and bones, which is a pure globalist network. And so when you install these globalist presidents, we're not really voting for people. They're being selected for us, or we're having a choice between two globalists. For the most part, that's the way it's been for the last 25, 30 years, I would say.
Right.
But so yeah, it doesn't help when the big banks are able to buy the politicians, and then that just gives us the illusion that we're actually voting, but really we're voting for the lesser of two evils, really.
Yeah, and you notice a couple days ago it came out that Soros has purchased, I think, 250 radio stations in the United States.
Oh, yes.
And the FCC usually takes their time on this, and you can't just go in and say, oh, I'm going to buy 200 and 300 radio stations without the Federal Communications stepping in and saying, okay, well, what are you going to do with this? What's going on? Making sure that you're not becoming a monopoly, things like that. And they literally just cleared the road for them to where Soros just came in and purchased these 250 radio stations. And what do you think he's going to do with it from now until November?
A bunch of disinformation. A bunch of they came in, they took control over the communism. Had a 70-year plan to take over the colleges, take over the media, and Soros is right there. I mean, that's Soros's philosophy. He's taken over a lot of district attorneys, a lot of our politicians and media, and he just keeps going. I was watching Bill Gates. There was a video of him down in New York buying a hot dog, and I'm like, how do these guys, how are they even allowed to walk the streets without people just almost attacking them? I would think. I mean, these people are so wicked.
Yeah.
I don't know. Or like Fauci, I mean, he's got his security and he better keep it. But I mean, how many families has he killed, family members? And
that's the other thing is, I think I heard a little while ago that it's Secret Service that Fauci has.
Yeah.
I don't know how
they
that's
were
possible.
they were trying to get rid of that because he retired, right? So
I don't know how that's possible, but there's a lot more people now that would definitely confront him than there were, say, even a few years ago.
Amen. Well, do you want to transition to what's going on in the news lately?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I thought the biggest news story is right here. I think Sherry Tenpenny really brought it out. Let me share my screen here. Play this. Get your thoughts on it.
Do a quick update about a document that got passed by the United Nations this weekend called the Pact of the Future document. It's two parts, one on science and technology and one about the youth and future generations. It is quite egregious, and it was done by a procedure called the silence procedure, which makes it a pact. And if no one objected, it is automatically adopted and put into the record as being completely adopted. This is the World Health Organization's runaround, or end around. Since they were not able to get the World Health Organization treaty passed, they decided to take it to the General Assembly. And it is even more egregious than what the World Health Organization was wanting to get passed. Let me just read you something really quickly about what is inside of this pact that is now being accepted by 193 nations around the world and equally open-armed accepted by our current administration. It says that this is the power structure, fully digital and maximized for the control of the masses. Everyone will be expected to have a biometric digital ID that marks them not just as citizens of an individual country, but as a global citizen. So anytime you hear global citizen or anytime you hear sustainability, think that this is an egregious thing that's happening at the level of the World Health Organization and the United Nations. Anyone that has a dissonant opinion will be labeled as misinformation, disinformation, or malinformation and memory hold. Perpetrators for unapproved information will be fact-checked and punished by the system, which will be operated and enforced by artificial intelligence. Punishments will include being locked out of one's bank account, being unable to make certain purchases, unable to get on an airplane, on a subway, drive on public roads. This is the future, according to the world's self-appointed overlords at the United Nations. These are unelected bureaucrats that are making decisions about our country, our sovereignty around the world. Nothing could be more important at this point in time than to get prepared. Have water, food, digital access, flashlights, a way to communicate with family and friends. Now is really the time to get involved and get prepared, because this is what's coming. Our Congress is sitting on its hands. There was a press conference on the 17th about this, and no further action has been taken. So it's up to us to mobilize and to go forward, particularly with your local sheriffs, to get your constitutional sheriffs to say, this isn't going to be allowed in my county. Thank you very much. Take action. We've been talking about the onset of one world order, one world government, one world religion, one world money for a long time. Well, it's no longer coming. It's here.
Yeah, I thought that was excellent.
Yeah, the whole social credit in China right now, they're trying seeing different ways of how they can control social credits of people that, I mean, they've even done it to the point of, you've jaywalked too much. We see that you've, sped too much, so we're going to lock you out of your car. We've locked you out of your bank. China's been working that type of thing for a few years now. But I thought it was interesting. She hit on exactly, we think, oh, we're the United States, we're a sovereign country, we're not going to listen to what they say. But you can get a federal administration that will absolutely try to do that. And the only way you're going to be able to fight it is at the local level. And I'm glad she said that, because that is the only way to do it. It's not about going to federal polls and hoping that your senators, that govern millions of people, are going to do anything. It's really at the county, and the town, and in some cases, not even at the state level. It's going to have to be localized for it to not take effect. She's right. And you can do that with our current laws.
Yeah.
The federal law.
The sheriff has so much power than we really realize. And I think that even some sheriffs realize.
Yeah. Well, and some in California, in these small towns in California, are realizing it, and they're saying no to the people coming from Sacramento. But yes, that's it. And people don't understand the power they have on juries. I recently got called for jury duty, and I think a lot of times, we're like, oh no, we got to go to jury duty. But the power that you have on these juries, especially if you get something that is erroneous laws that should not have existed in the first place. Jury nullification has always been a great thing.
Yeah. What do you think, Mark, about have you been following the storm much and the massive damage that it has been doing?
So
here?
yeah, I've looked at all the pictures there in North Carolina and up around Tennessee.
Georgia, South
The
Carolina.
thing that was amazing to me is how this huge storm coming through the Gulf didn't really hit Florida. It impacted the mountainous areas on the East Coast, hundreds, maybe even 1,000 miles. Well, maybe not 1,000, but hundreds of miles away. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, I don't think it's crazy. It's called weather geoengineering, where the chemtrails, where they seed the clouds and they can actually. My wife gave me, let's see if I can pull it up, a bunch of patents for this geo weathering, and one of them was how to control storms and hurricanes. And so they're able to do that because they drop the metal and the aluminum in a cloud, and they can place it in a storm, and then they can direct it with what HARPA, I think it is, and it's a lot of it. A lot of people are saying this is kind of like Hawaii 2.0. A lot of people are speculating that they guided this storm this way, and they're trying to steal the lithium. North Carolina is very wealthy in lithium, and what they're trying to say is the government's going to come in there and try and take that land. If that's true, I don't know, but that's one theory, and the other theory is that they're able now to guide hurricanes, and they've been working on this since the 60s and 70s. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's out there. I mean, it is out there.
I was going to say, you talk just even like 2 years ago, I would have been like, no, there's no way they're not doing that. I see all this stuff on chemtrails, but just in the last year, when pretty much all of our quote unquote conspiracy theories have all proven true. I think Alex Jones is now 95, 97% right on everything he's said over the last few years. But it's the same thing with the weather. I began to go, what? They are controlling it. They can control it. Now, how well can they control it? That's still a question. But they're absolutely doing it to push the climate change agenda. Honestly, after this thing happened, or this thing up in North Carolina happened, I haven't heard any talk of climate change. Have you? Like, this is
all the libtards are saying, oh, see, because it hit conservative folks. I mean, other than Asheville, North Carolina, which is
that's the San Francisco of the South, right?
Right, but it hit all of the conservative counties. I mean, big time. And Joe Biden is at the beach, literally sleeping through this. He's giving
aid. Did he come out yesterday and really say, have you seen where he says, no, we're not going to give funding? Is that real?
Yeah, it is real. Wow. And of course, Kamala is running away from the press as usual. So I think that this was on purpose. I think they hit a very high conservative block of folks. I think the lithium there in North Carolina may be a play, but they're letting these people die, Mark. There are people they have stand down orders from FEMA. FEMA has been ready to go, but they have had stand down orders for 3 damn days. There are bodies washing up everywhere, Mark.
Yeah.
There's dead bodies in trees. There's dead bodies in cars. They're all over the place. People were standing on their roofs thinking, just like in the movies, oh, a helicopter's going to come and save me.
Right.
No, you come back later and the roof caved in. Grandma got swept away. The 5-year-old kid got swept away. This is disgusting what these people did. I mean, there's no forgiveness in what they have done here. And I hope that they can prove that this was weather modification, because they're acting like it, because they don't want to help. They've got to investigate this. Why are there stand-down orders? Why do we have the Red Cross ready to go? Why do we have FEMA ready to go? And they're not allowed to go with the supplies to these poor people.
Yeah, it is terrible. And when I saw it, I was like, that can't be real.
So let me ask you this, Mark. Do you think that they're going to be put up in 5-star hotels like all the illegals coming here?
It's just one more nail in the coffin of them having any chance of winning the election. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of the same deal they did in Ohio with the train that derailed. That was in Ohio, right? Yeah. And the poison and all of the things, they didn't do anything there. And this was right at the beginning of Biden's, administration. He had just really started. He never visited that area.
So the people with the chemical destruction there on the train, I can't remember the name of that city. I thought it was Pennsylvania, but maybe it wasn't.
Maybe Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Anyway,
the biochemical plant that blew up a few days ago.
Right. So, Mark, they got $1,000 check if they signed something, right? And what about the people in Hawaii that got totally destroyed to build their smart city, by the way? Right. They got $700 a family. Boy, that's so much. I mean, and the millions and billions of dollars we're giving Israel so that they can go and just annihilate all these people and start World War III. And we're giving it to Ukrainians, who are the most corrupt nation that other than Israel. I mean, that's where our money's going, and we can't even help our own people. That's how corrupt our government has become. That's how infiltrated our government has become with globalists. And it all comes back to what she was saying. This is a big push to be a global citizen. To become a global citizen, the United States has to be gutted. The middle class has to go. And
we're the last one.
That's why these guys are attacking us. None of their policies are stupid. They are smart, and they're purposefully destroying the country.
Well, you look at this, like 2 days ago, the biochemical company in Ohio, huge explosion. We don't even know what's releasing in the atmosphere out of that place. It just seems like one disaster after the next. And you got to wonder, is this really just by happenstance, or is this being engineered one
disaster after another? That's what they talk about. They talk about gaining power through chaos, through multiple.
But I think it's backfiring. I think more and more people are realizing, going, we're not going to vote for this.
Yeah, that's what. I wanted to talk about this. I've been saying this to my wife forever. I said, babe, look at what they do. They do it on Fox News as well. They always pretend when it comes to Trump and Biden, or Trump and Kamala Harris, that everything's so close. Everything's so tight. They're neck and neck. And the polling is propaganda. And I said, babe, this is why they do this. So when they cheat, it's conditioned everyone to think, oh, gee, it was so close. We almost pulled it off, right?
Yeah, right.
But the reality is, you can't find anyone that's voting for these people. These people can't get a crowd unless they have some concert person come, some celebrity come. Other than that, they don't even get a crowd. And I was watching InfoWars today, and they had Mike Flynn on, and he said the same thing. And I was with my wife, and I said, "See, yes, that's exactly right." He said it's total propaganda. The polls are propaganda. They're designed to make you think that things are so close that when they cheat, when they steal it, you're not really questioning it. Because
Right.
if the American people, the average Joe, knew that Trump is so far ahead,
Right.
and then they cheated, then everyone would be like wanting accountability. But
Yeah.
they pretend that it's just so close.
It's going to be interesting to watch. Everybody's telling me or asking me, what is it going to be? And I don't think it's going to be a landslide like, I think Reagan and Mondale, where that was just huge landslide. But I think it's going to be big enough to where even if they're cheating, it's just we're so far ahead that it's just not going to happen. Now that's being me very optimistic, but you just see it in the crowds. I mean, he went to the Alabama game yesterday, and it just,
Oh yeah,
I mean, he was with Kid Rock, and nobody even cared about that guy.
right,
Everybody cared about Trump,
right.
and
And they stand up, and then the vice president, what's his name, or the
yeah,
wannabe vice president, he got
yeah. Well,
booed.
he goes to Michigan. He got booed in Michigan.
See, that's what I'm talking about. Like, do you really believe that they're neck and neck when you see real reality,
Yeah,
And yeah, that really concerns me that they're, but you're right, it's got to be too big to rig,
yeah.
and that's what we
I
hope
think
now. Now, did you see this thing with Kennedy and the CDC?
well,
Let me
yeah. I haven't seen this specific one, but
This is Robert Redfield. Robert Redfield was director of CDC for a long, long, long time. And he stepped down kind of right after COVID and the vaccines rolled out. And he's kind of been a little bit of a whistleblower. And Kennedy has been attacking him and the CDC for years. But now watch what Redfield's saying now. Let's pull up this video. Is it up on your screen?
yeah, I see it.
Okay. All right. Let's play this.
I'll tell you something that interesting that happened today. I actually was going to mention this to Rand. So it was an extraordinary event to me. But Robert Redfield, who I really go after in my Fauci book, kind of hammer and tongs, wrote an editorial in Newsweek magazine today saying that he was endorsing President Trump because President Trump was going to restore American health. And that President Trump, he said, a lot of people might surprise me to see this, but hear me say this, but he has chosen exactly the only person who can do this, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. This was breathtaking to me because this is the guy who's the head of the CDC that I've been criticizing for years. And then this afternoon, he came over and had lunch with me. It's the first time I've ever met him. And the first thing he said to me is, "You got everything right."
Wow.
Wow. Now let's unpack that a little bit. Now I don't know if you read. I read Kennedy's book. Let's see, what is it? The Real Anthony Fauci. One of the best books I've read in like 20 years, hands down. And it's a totally non-theological book, so that's how good it is. And I mean, he goes after him. I mean, and for Redfield to admit that everything Kennedy has been saying is correct. I mean,
Right.
He's basically attacking globalists.
Yep.
Purposefully destroying our food chain to make us sick, to make us dependent on Rockefeller globalists, and to depopulate us. And here's a guy that ran CDC and saying, yes, what you've been saying about the globalist agenda, working through big pharma, working through our food industry, destroying us with chemicals. Yes, they're trying to depopulate us. Yes, they're making money off of sick and diseased Americans. And that's why I'm going to support Trump and I'm going to support you. Whoa. Wow. I mean, that is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's good to see well, two things. One is it's going to be interesting to see how. I think people can only be pushed so far, and I think Americans are reaching that point. But I think the reason they are is not just look, and it's huge. Inflation is hitting the middle class very hard, and it's causing a lot of debt, and they're finally seeing, even though they'll come out and say, oh no, that we're not in a recession, but you go look, the same thing I've been buying over the last year has tripled in price. It doesn't matter how many statistics you show me or charts you show me, that's the reality. And with inflation and with this health and the impact that the COVID shot has had on people, Americans have finally, I think, are hitting that wall. And thank goodness for the social medias like X and the internet. They're also seeing through the lies. So I think we're reaching a point in time where they're going to have to, the globalists are going to have to change their game plan, because we're seeing everything that they're doing, and it's no longer this conspiracy theory. It's true. And even if I go, it's okay, it might be a conspiracy theory, I'm not going to buy into that. I look at my life and my family and go, I don't have any money. I have people that are sick. You see kids dying now at an alarming rate. I mean, I just read an article about infants. They're trying to do add the COVID to the infant shots that you get. And I mean, it's crazy. And so I think people are finally, Americans, I should say, are finally realizing. I don't know about Europe. It seems like one instance they're coming around, and then the next instance they're back to their old ways. But at least Americans, I think, are finally getting fed up, and they're seeing the
I think it kind of comes back to the control mechanism of Chapter 4 that Alex Jones is talking about. See, if you can keep a population extremely poor, living paycheck to paycheck, then you can roll out things like COVID and control people. Well, if you don't wear this mask, if you don't take this experimental vaccine, then you won't have a job. See, so then it plays on people's fears. Like, I'm poor, I need my house, I don't want to go bankrupt. So I guess I have to comply. But here's the point, and you're making the point. It's the $1 million point, and that is, how far can the American people be pushed, be gaslit, before they don't give a rat's ass about money, and they want heads to roll? They want a revolution again. I mean, we had a revolution because the Rothschilds decided they didn't like the colonies printing their own money. Right? Benjamin Franklin told them. It wasn't long after that they cut that back, and then their economies went to heck. And then on top of that, it was insult to injury to start taxing the tea and stuff and that was the last straw. But really, it was them saying, no, you can't print your own money, colonies, because you're our slaves, and we don't want you succeeding. We don't want your economy, because that's what they did. They had Benjamin Franklin and some of his friends. They invited them to England. They said, we want to know, why are the economies of the colonies thriving? Said, well, because we're printing our own money. Well, we got to stop that. So again, it comes back to this control monetarily, and then placing the fear mechanism in there. And I don't know collectively how far they can push us and where the red line is, but
I can, it's almost like we're getting there. I feel it, so. But we'll see. And I can tell you the younger generation is heavily moving into this Web3 technology with crypto, and they are seeing the advantages of basically taking themselves out of this banking system and putting themselves into this bankless system of crypto. And man, it is astounding how fast this technology is moving, as well as seeing this generation that is growing up realizing they will never be able to afford a home, that their degree that they got is not going to mean anything to them. And so what are they going to do? And this alternative this crypto alternative is really changing the way 18 to 35-year-olds are looking at the economy for the better. They're seeing decentralization. They're talking about the decentralization, getting out of the banking system, all of these things, which, of course, government can't keep up with that pace. They know, they're scared. I don't know if they're going to be able to do anything about it, just like the internet in the early 90s. Oh yeah, we'll be able to regulate this. Hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. What do you think about who's the senator that has that thing on his head sometimes? Grassland, Jamie something. Jamie.
Oh no, hang on.
I forget his name. Anyway, a while back he was on camera saying that if Trump wins, he basically is going to organize a coup. And so, I mean, I don't see how the country's not going to go through some form of a civil war. I don't know how long it's going to take. I mean, I know that the globalists are trying to do their 2030 agenda. And so I think that what's going to hit the fan before then, if not before the election. If they try and steal this election again, or they delay it, or they win and they pack the court and they get rid of the filibuster and they add Washington as a state, DC as a state, and they make it a one-party system.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so from our side, I don't see how that's not going to start a civil war. And the liberals are already saying, well, if Trump wins, we're not going to comply. We're not going to accept him as a president. We're going to have a revolution. And I'm like, but here's the thing. I think reality is that there's just not that many of them. It comes back to the polls. Right. I mean, I really don't believe there's that many libtards out there. I think they own the media and they give the impression that there's a lot more of them out there than there really are.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at. I can say kind of from it all comes back to economics in my mind. It's always like, where's the money? Where the money goes, that's what's going to happen. Can this revolution happen? Yes, but it's going to be about money. But honestly, if he loses, it's going to be because there was cheating involved, mass fraud, just huge criminal activity. And I don't know when that happens. I think that's the breaking point for most Americans, and who knows what's going to happen after that. If he does win, I think you're right. I think we're going to get an optimism that we haven't had in a long time, at least for the last 12, 15 years. Because, it's funny if you hear the Democrats, they're always blaming Trump, but they've been in power for 12 years. There was only a 4-year period where they didn't have it.
I know.
So everything that's going on has been caused by them.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Let me get this straight. Kamala is running a campaign of change, and yet she's been in control for 4 years.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes no sense. She's basically trying to steal Trump's platform, no tax on tips and all this other stuff. I mean, is there anything original about these people other than just the complete wickedness in which they want to destroy people? They really have no original thought or anything of substance to actually build things. They're only good at tearing things apart.
So have you been keeping? I don't know if you're on the Tucker Carlson network.
Yes, I am.
I gave him my $70, and I thought, and man, it's been the best $70 I've spent. And he's been on this tour, and every single one of them have been great. And I don't know if you caught any of them, but the Alex Jones one, where they had Alex Jones in one. What's the blonde haired lady that has her talk show? She's a lawyer. What's her name? Anyway, she was on one. I can't remember her name. Anyway, it's been great. And, he talks about this evil, that we're not fighting flesh and blood. He's basically saying that we are fighting the evil spirits in the other realm. And I don't necessarily, from a theological standpoint, but I don't buy into all of that. But it does make you stop and think: are people really this evil?
Yeah, they are.
To do these things.
James 4 nails it. He's asked, where do wars, covetous, adulteries, the most wicked things you can think of, he lists, where do these things come from? And he says, well, they come from Satan. No, he doesn't say they come from Satan or demons. He says they come from the heart of man. And the heart is deceitfully wicked above all things. Above all things, scripture says, and only God knows it. I mean, we deceive ourselves in just how wicked our hearts can be. And being a Christian, the filth and stuff that goes through my mind on a momently basis, you're just constantly thanking God throughout the day for his grace and his mercy that can only be found in Christ. But if you're not saved, the level of depravity there's no limit to the depraved nature. It will kill, it will destroy, it will do everything for power, for lusts.
Yeah. Well, Megan Kelly is who I was thinking of. She was on. But he comes back around and he says, on this tour, and I think it's 16 cities or whatever. He said, the most refreshing thing that he has seen, and he's gone from Maine, where he's from, all the way to California. I think last night or the night before, he was in Jacksonville, Florida, with Donald Trump Jr. He said that the people have been overwhelmingly nice, overwhelmingly accommodating. And he says, when I'm in a city, it's not that I go and try to find all the people that like me and hang out with them. He goes, no, I go to restaurants, I go to a hotel, or I go for walks. And he said, you would think that people would see me and just attack me based on what you hear from the media. And he goes, it's not that at all. He said, I haven't run into anybody that hates me and trying to do anything. So that, that just tells me that we're not in this place that the media tries to tell us we're in. From a standpoint of the American people just are really hating Trump and hating all of this stuff and, that's going on. And it's not the case.
I think Alex Jones is a good gauge of that. And Alex talks about that a lot because the media has gone after him more than anyone over the years and blackballed him, to where the only thing you identify Alex Jones with is Sandy Hook. I mean, that he's a monster. I mean, that this has just been going on in the psyche of the nation and the world through the propaganda media. And he says, I'm a good gauge. I'm the canary in the coal mine, because now it used to be I'd go somewhere and I'd get spat on, or I'd have someone throw something and I'd have a few people be nice to me. He says, now everywhere I go, everyone's like, you were right. Thank you so much for your service. So what you hear on TV is not reality. It's propaganda. And
you're seeing a shift. And I think people are moving away from watching the nightly news. And of course, newspapers, I think, have been dead for at least 5 years. Magazines dead. And I think, coming out of this pandemic, and then all of the lies that we were fed now coming to light, and everything that someone like Alex Jones said turns out to be true. And now you've got all these other people that are just like him. I follow him on X, and people are starting to see this. And I think X obviously has driven a lot of this, but I mean, just last week, Mark Zuckerberg comes out and says he's libertarian. He's hired a whole PR company to help him and his company be more appease or pleasing to the libertarian conservative side of Americans. I mean, I just don't buy anything that the media is telling me anymore, because I'm just like, it's just not reality.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, you watch those Tucker Carlson when he comes into these arenas. They're arenas, 20 to 26,000 people.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't make that up. You can't say that, oh, I mean, he doesn't have any celebrities coming up there and performing for him before he comes on. It's just him talking and then his guests. It's going to be, I think it's going to be refreshing to see what happens in November, and then extensively through the next 4 years. I think we're going into a time that is going to be good for America. I think we're still going to have our same problems from an economic standpoint, because that's way deeper than just Trump. You've got to, those are roots that you've got to get rid of.
Yeah, getting rid of the Fed, getting back to a sound monetary policy.
Right.
That's the root issue. And whoever controls that, which the Rothschilds and the globalists do, we've got to address the root problem at some point. But at the same time, we're so busy putting out all the fires that they're causing that it makes it difficult. But
that's right.
We'll get there. Do you have anything else to add as far as things going on in the news? Or
no, I had one thing. I saw this Jim Carrey, not Jim Carrey. It was, let's see. Yeah, John Kerry came out. Who was he talking to? Impact 2024. He's part of these minorities now that are saying we need to control the social media, because social media is finally pulling the wool and moving the veil away and showing the truth, and they can't stand it. And no matter what rhetoric they say, it's blowing up climate change. People aren't buying that anymore. They're not buying, even the Israel thing, that's a tough nut to crack. But people are starting to see that as well, because it's affecting their livelihood. And I think when they see, okay, all this money going to Israel, why? And all these things, and John Kerry hopefully is going to go off into the sunset soon. But when you hear anyone talk about social media and that it is dangerous because they're spreading misinformation, you take it to the bank that it's absolutely true of what's going on. And these people are globalists that don't want the truth out there.
Well, what he said is the number one threat to disinformation, right, is the Constitution or the First Amendment.
Yeah.
So he openly said that the First Amendment is their biggest problem.
Yeah.
That's pretty scary, folks.
Yeah, it is.
Well, amen. Well, all right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us for another edition of Talking God and Politics with Mark and Mike. We hope to have more shows as time progresses. And I appreciate your financial support at Patreon, which has been a blessing because I've been able to cut back on my work schedule and writing more books and more articles and doing more podcasts. I hope to be, Mark, interviewing Alex Newman of the Epoch Times. He is the world's best at exposing the globalists. He wrote a book on the
that'd be nice, man. Yeah.
The guy's awesome. He even let me use his
that's a great news site too. I've been with them for a couple of years now.
Yeah, he's got a website. I think it's called the Sentinel or something like that. But he's awesome. So I'm going to try and get him on. I'm going to be interviewing Gary DeMar Thursday. So that should be good on the relationship between Matthew 24 and 1 Thessalonians 4. So that should be an excellent interview as well. So I'm glad to be able to spend some time with you again, and my schedule is getting freer, so hope to have
That'll
some.
be great. Yeah, I little ill prepared today, but I
Oh,
think I pulled it off. But next time, yeah, I'll come with some good stuff. But and we'll continue through the book. I think it's a good book, and we'll get through it.
amen. Well, thanks, brother, and we'll see
All right,
you
bud.
next time.
Yes, sir.